In a career that lasted over 3 decades, Yasujirō Ozu departed with various innovative techniques. One of his finest amongst them that complemented his humanistic stories can be the low-angle camera shots that rarely moves from its position. These static scenes that tends to linger on the frame way after everyone has left it allows us to take it all in and cherish these fleeting moments that we tend to crave later on in life when they become fond memories that we can't get hold of, placing us right in front of them as if we are directly taking a part in that scenario, which possesses such emotional tenacity that it becomes quite tough not to get attached and be absolutely devastated after witnessing their unfortunate outcomes. He began to create these sort of serious stories around 1930s, primarily focusing on families, marriage, and intergenerational relationships. And by late 1940s, he mastered that structure, which can be considered as one of the earliest instances of slice-of-life films, laying down the foundation and improving on his formula as the years went by, with the 1950s being his most influential and prolific time period, until he met his demise in 1963 on his birthday, which was heavily influenced by his drinking and smoking habits. Although his writing, with repeating actors, characters, and events with slight alterations, can feel a bit overdone after a while, the way he tackled or dissected various social issues from that era can still be valuable even when analyzed from a retrospective lens. There is a constant battle between accepting progressive mannerisms and conforming to traditional ideologies, where neither are demonized but shown to coexist in the same ecosphere, or in the least try their best to set aside their differences for the greater good. With such an extensive catalogue, it can be quite tough to choose which titles are worthy of the attention or demands to be viewed and discussed. But some of them are so rich with timeless wisdom and universal quandaries that they can't be overlooked. Early summer has all the usual trappings that Ozu was renowned for. An urban working joint family trying to inhabit under a single roof with differing viewpoints, while the topic of marriage constantly looms over the head of various aging single women who aren't overly excited about it or appreciate the persistence of that notion, mainly from the male side of the family, relatives or family friends. In here, there is a greater focus on the change of lifestyle in the lives of educated women. In that post-war Japan, they were experiencing a far liberal and lenient way of living. But that doesn't mean they didn't have to deal with conservative standards. That change, while being widely accepted, was still not favored by the men from that time period. We use it to reason why women remain unmarried even after the ideal marriageable years. Their etiquettes or mannerisms doesn't appeal to the traditionally inclined men, a behavior that they themselves have been showcasing for the longest time. But when that gets mirrored by women, it isn't considered graceful or suits their gender. As it happens in his stories, everyone apart from the person getting married are shown to be ecstatic about it or invested to an unhealthy extent. They perceive it as the path that leads to happiness and a step that is necessary in life, while the detractors view it as a gamble that is bound to drastically alter their lives. A decision that is extremely risky and might not pay off in the long run. But it isn't as if it is only the impudent men who are in favor of arranged marriages, as women of varying ages aren't against them either, a result of a system that prefers one over the other, which turns out to be harmful for every participating group. One side might appear to have more authority over other, but such a journey is hardly conducted in a harmonious manner, let alone conclude in that same fashion. However, their roles in those scenarios are vastly distinct when it comes to being widely accepted, such as the men from the family going out to have peace, whereas the women are left with no option other than doing the household chores. The father in particular has a tendency to stay away from his children even when they don't return back late at night. And as it tends to happen, it's always the women who have to make sacrifices for the sake of men's satisfaction. Like the idea of marrying an older man being more acceptable than if the roles were reversed, which happens to be the crucial concern for the family in question. And that alone triggers unbearable strain on them, both directly and indirectly. Where the brother accepting a proposal from a man whom we never actually see without discussing with her sister isn't considered problematic. But when she takes a similar decision, it is labeled as a hasty verdict and unfair by not including her family in that conclusion. A selection that should be solely determined by her is seen as an unjust action by her parents, where her thought-out choice to unify with an understanding and hardworking married man with a child is deemed outrageous and not their underplanned and undisclosed elderly prospect, opposing that commitment of hers by acting distant towards her, as if she has done something immoral. Amidst a myriad of fascinating scenes with thought-provoking writing, a certain element that makes this particular work special in my eyes is its commentary on the passage of time. Relationships that were unbreakable in the youth years becoming more and more detached as one gets older. And isn't that the most hurtful realization about life? People are bound to grow apart from each other while they prioritize their own lives. Like the friends who are eager to marry, slowly getting removed from the story, pursuing a different outcome than the duo we are following, and gradually get separated. Or when their neighbors relocate to a different place for financial reasons. Hesitant at first, but they don't have any other option, and it is simply out of their control. These bittersweet moments of moving on makes us appreciate and treasure all those memories from our past that we try to preserve even if life doesn't allow it.
どうも。写真屋さん、もう一枚お願いしたいの。お父様とお母様だけ。
ああ、それはいい。そうかい。じゃあ。
When it comes to the location or household, Early Spring is visibly distinct from any of his past works. There isn't anything extravagant about the places they are shown to occupy, focusing on the lower strata of working class families in urban cities and the sort of issues they have to deal with on the daily basis. This imbues the film with a rugged feel by depicting the not-so-radiant side of the rapidly advancing Tokyo, like the recurring shots of the railway station crowded with young adults who are stuck in corporate jobs with no other option but to carry out the same routine every day, even if it takes a huge toll on their mental health. They are aware of its downsides and are fed up with their work. However, they simply cannot quit it, mostly out of domestic reasons. It isn't an ideal situation, but they have accepted their reality, which was destined to happen ever since they joined their college. Struggling students then, and depressed workers now. A path taken in the name of wealth, failing to provide what it promised. What makes the dissection of this concept even more compelling is how we, as humans, have a habit to compare our lives with others without being aware of the unsaid complexities. Numerous characters are shown to express the bitterness towards their situation, like them constantly talking about the temperature of a certain area and how it must be better where others reside. Or gendered quandaries like how men think that their friends have better professions and lead an easier life than them. Similarly, women discuss about the ups and downs of being a housewife or working in order to get by. Such a way of living is bound to erode a relationship and allow affairs to blossom between colleagues who find it easier to connect with each other, using obvious excuses that their partners can easily detect. But they are aware of the predicament that comes with their questionable conduct. Early or late, it isn't positive from their standpoint, getting the short end of a stick in a deal where they're usually neglected. However, that doesn't stop their husbands to mention their loyalty while they stay away late to binge drink with their buddies or bring them to their home in a drunken state, taking their loved one's compassion and kindness for granted. Even though their tolerance is tested innumerable times, they don't let it affect their sympathy or concern towards them. And in their absence, the men struggle to manage on their own or maintain the sanctity of their house. However, what's more disheartening is that others have simply become accustomed with these sort of practices, conditioned to believe that's how most husbands ideally behave, and they are supposed to take their side no matter what happens, all in the name of sustaining their marriage. After all, it is the cursed actuality of a grown woman who doesn't have a home to call her own. On the other hand, men are simply busy formulating rumors and questioning the integrity of a woman in a consensual relationship, justified because of her previous liaisons, just so they can occupy their mundane days with exciting gossips. Their concern can be valid, but eve-teasing on private matters isn't any more virtuous than extramarital affairs. Apart from a couple of brief, insightful scenes, the continuous exploration of their professional careers provides this film with a timeless quality. What is more valuable, jobs that require educated individuals and provide security, or the ones which are skill-based and more versatile in nature? Well, both possesses enviable qualities, as that suit comes with a status, even if you're forced to commute daily on crammed trains to work for obnoxious bosses just for a bonus, away from your family and trapped in a prison without visible bars. When that factor is taken into consideration, laboring near your residency doesn't seem that bad. But all of that transforms into utter senseless talks when there is a sick, bedridden man who is eagerly waiting for the days when he can go back to work and meet his friends. Anything is better or more bearable than the loneliness that comes with being immobile for a prolonged period of time. In those troubling nights, the tender echoes from the past is their sole ally, helping them to firmly grasp on their existence before it slips away. No matter how short it might be, when that is placed alongside a scenario of being stuck in a resentful post for your entire life, that sudden demise doesn't come off to be any worse, and maybe a favorable way to pass away. Harsh, yes, but is it any less unfortunate or totally soul-crushing than being enslaved for your entire life and still be left with absolutely nothing after retirement? A stage where they transform into a forgotten relic in the eyes of the world, stranded as they struggle to fend for themselves even in the most meager ways. And it isn't just limited to middle-class families. The ever-flowing time isn't forgiving to anyone, and neither does it discriminate on the basis of affluence or power. All that leaves us with this thought. Is a life's work really worth it if it doesn't amount to anything beyond the always insufficient monetary gain? Then is it worth to remain hopeful and persevere? At first glance, Tokyo Twilight seems to be another family drama focusing on various marital and familial relationships, albeit being more complicated with indications of abuse, the byproduct of a matrimony that was forced upon them, and all of that isn't helped with their increasing financial troubles. She is also unwilling to accept any sort of assistance from outsiders or even openly discuss about what is ailing her. However, it soon becomes something that is far more substantial as we dive into the critical topic of unplanned pregnancy and abortion, the primary factor behind the young daughter's secretive habits, while the father in question inquires and behaves in the most typical or expected manner, stranding her to deal with it and suffer from the mental and physical trauma. Similarly, her father is disappointed by her inexplicable behavior, leaving us with the older sister who understands that she is suffering from the lack of motherly love and the isolation that comes with not receiving that emotional support that everyone needs in their life. which even makes her feel unwanted because in her eyes, she should be the one to blame as their mother left them after she was born, stressing her to such a degree that she even regrets her birth. A person who totally vanished away from her life, and the remnants that were left burned away in a house fire. However, she isn't the only person who is absent from her life. The man behind this desperate condition of hers is simply non-existent in the film, and fails miserably to act as if he cares or worries about her. This facade that he puts in front of her is completely shattered when he fails to visit her while she was in intensive care. But it isn't only her apparent loved ones who fail to properly look after her. She had to deal with the stigma present in the medical sphere who don't readily provide the necessary attention that is required for an abortion if they come from a reputed background, refusing to continue with the process unless it is fatal for the patient or they pass a questionable criteria which ultimately takes a hit on their lifestyle. You know, the sort of woman that men tend to prefer for their wild or bad side, as their image are frequently tarnished by them for no apparent reason, judging someone's entire personality on the basis of a select occurrence. Although her decision was sensible seeing the circumstances, she wasn't completely delighted with it, which is made visibly evident when she sees her sister's daughter, as the guilt quickly begins to eat her alive. And this troubling mental state of hers can be perfectly summarized with this scene where she confronts her mother.
子供なんか産みません。一生子供なんか産まない。どうして？もし産んだってお母さんみたいに捨てて出るような無責任なことはしません。思いっきり可愛がってやります。思いっきり可愛がってやる。
All of this is further worsened by her oblivious family imploring her about getting married right when she went through the worst imaginable experience. And if that wasn't enough, she has already witnessed the nightmarish outcomes of that union. From her mother having an affair while her father was away, to her sister being distant from her changed husband. A series of doomed relationships, all concluding with her unheeding boyfriend who isn't willing to take on the responsibility for his actions. And what comes of it? A young woman prematurely dies in an accident. The blame gets handed onto the mother by her older daughter who requests her to leave while deep down yearning for her love that she has been deprived of for far too long. And the mother, who came back to their hometown after the death of her son, departs after the demise of her younger daughter. The sufferers are primarily women whose inner turmoil is generally left on the background so the men can broadcast their issues. And when the worst comes to worst, it's always the women who have to compromise and relinquish their needs just so the inadequacies of men can be forgiven or looked past without them even attempting to rectify their past mistakes.